You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big tent, the big circus tent of podcasting in the sky. I don't know what that means because we don't have elephants, lions, and tigers or bears. Well, welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys being here. As always, we have an amazing author and brilliant mind on the show, so we'll be getting to him in a second and some of the things he's working on in leadership, et cetera, some of the children's books he's written as well. In the meantime, as always, the Chris Voss Show isn't quite an MLM, but we do require you to have 5 people in your downline. No, I'm just kidding. We don't do that. But please reach out to your family and friends and, mail them a postcard that says, hey, have you subscribed yet to the Chris Voss Show? Tell them to go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, go to our big LinkedIn group. LinkedIn newsletter over there is killing it. The big LinkedIn stuff we're doing. We just booked the second billionaire we've ever had on the show today. So watch for that. They'll be, I think, here next week. We'll be talking to billionaires and I think we just might make the show all just billionaires from here on out. So this guest might be the last normal guest on the show. No, that's not going to happen. We're not going to be that way. Anyway, guys, one tip of the news that I thought was kind of interesting. Meta, if you're familiar with Meta, which is otherwise known as Facebook, one of their vice presidents told the staff to make the metaverse so obviously successful that his dad stops calling him every week to ask about it. Wow, that's some pressure right there. Basically, he's just telling his staff, please make the metaverse stop sucking. So there's that. Anyway, our newest author, and welcome to the show, is going to be Atlas Aultman. He is here to promote his newest book that will be coming out in June. It's Rule of 3, How Elite Leaders Win. And this is one of several books that he has. We'll be talking to him about his amazing book, his life, what sort of things he did in the White House, et cetera, et cetera. Atlas Aultman has successfully led military and technology teams in the White House Special Operations and Combat Zones since joining the Air Force in 1995. He and his 16-year-old son recently teamed up and published a book series that garnered #1 best-selling rank on Amazon for over 2 weeks in preparation to self-publish his leadership lessons book, which we just aforementioned, and it's available to the public coming June 2023. He is now helping people write, speak, and win using his processes and experiences from the shadowy sidelines of history. I should put that in the movie voice. Welcome to the show, Atlas. How are you?
Thanks, Chris. I am excellent now. Thanks for that awesome introduction. That's I love the word shadowy. You said it so perfectly.
Yeah, it was like the whole "In a World Gone Mad." Atlas Aultman brings you the process and experiences from the shadowy sidelines of history. I don't do that well at all.
I feel like a billionaire though, so
yeah,
let's go with that.
We try to make every guest feel like a billionaire. So welcome to the show, Atlas. Give us your .coms, wherever you want people to find you on those interwebs in the sky.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm on leaderstatkit.com. So that's leaders like the word -KIT.com.
Let's talk about a little bit of your history. Let's sell you a little bit to the audience and talk about what sort of upbringing, background, what got you in the military, et cetera, and focus on leadership.
Yeah, I love myself. So let's talk about me. This is fantastic.
I thought I was the only narcissist in the room.
Early childhood, my dad left us. I ended up hanging out with my grandpa, who was a special operator. He taught me how to march, and my first words were "Hup, 2, 3, 4." I looked at him and I said, "Man, I want to be that guy." Everyone comes up to him for answers. And then my mom went and married another guy in the Army. He was fantastic at leading too. And I was like, I got to do this leadership thing. And apparently the military is a place to do it. So the recruiter came over and I said, I want to learn how to do leader things. Mm-hmm. And he sold me a bill of goods, as they always do. and I became an admin troop. And I sat next to commanders, and apparently I did that really well. And that was before email was a thing. So I used to print out a lot of emails. And one of them said, hey, general officer who I was working for, you can give a scholarship to anyone. And I said, hey, boss, can I do this? He said, yeah, go talk to the speechwriter. So Christmas, he visits me, pays for my education. I become a commissioned officer. And now 27 years later, I've worked at the White House, elite military organizations that people will never hear of because they're in the shadowy, the shadowy sidelines of history. Commanded some really fantastic teams across battlefields in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've opened the door to technology and innovative cells, but really innovation was where leadership is. In fact, if you look at all the leaders that everyone looks at now, people look at innovation first and they say, how do I be like that? So I went into that. Now my official title in the Air Force is Warfare Communications Operations. And I have a 17, which is an operator, Air Force Specialty Code, which I'm about to retire here pretty soon, and then help people with all the things that I learned and all of these special teams that I got to be a part of. And in Afghanistan, I punched the ticket. I was the director of special operations, and President Trump at the time said, hey, we're leaving. And I said, guys, I think we're serious. And the Air Force made an offer. They said, how about you stay in, we'll send you to Phoenix. I said, man, you know me too well. It's been too long. But now I'm in Phoenix, and I'm serving out that couple of years that they're letting me do before I go help. So
there you go. And you served in the Obama administration.
I did.
There you go.
2 years there at the end, first term, where I was advancing him, which means I was going before him and making the White House appear before him and his staff and Secret Service and all those people.
Nice.
And then I lived at the White House for 2 years as his personal communicator, which means whenever somebody had a bad day, they would call me and say, hey, this is a bad day. And I would vet all of his calls for him if needed to be for military emergencies.
Oh,
good
wow.
Gig. It's a good gig.
I suppose that's pretty necessary for, what goes on in the world and all the confrontations, military, chances for something to escalate and turn into World War III. So you got to have definitely a handle on that.
Yeah, it was phenomenal to be there. The team was amazing too. I mean, I can't say enough good things, but he's always the president, whether he's sleeping or whether he's in the Oval. So somebody's always got to be there.
It's a hell of a job. You look at how much toll it takes. I think Obama did some jokes about how old he looked. I think it was the national press thing, about the difference in age and stuff. And I mean, the stuff you have to worry about and the weight of the world. I mean, I run small businesses and, had 100 plus employees. That weighs on you. I'm like, well, what is it like when you're the leader of the whole world? So let's get into, how you've transposed a lot of that. I was going to tell the joke too. You went from Afghanistan to Phoenix. So you just went from one hell desert to another. no shame.
No, it's gorgeous here. You should come visit.
It's a beautiful place, but it's hotter than hell. And I say that because I live in Vegas.
Right.
I feel your pain, except about 10 degrees less. So let's see. Let's touch on the first book that you put out, I believe, with your son, the Fox book. Let's give that a plug.
Okay. Yeah. So my son looks at me. He's 15 at the time, and he goes, Dad, I'm going to be driving soon. How do I make money? And I was like, write a book, dude. And he's like, let's do that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, we should write a book. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't speak French. What is this we word you're using? So I was like, you write a book, I'll write a book. We'll see who's better. And we go after it. And he brings me the book and he goes, Dad, seriously, how do I make money? And I said, you need to get one of those clown suits and some good makeup and figure out how to do the balloon animal thing. And then
that or just join the circus.
He's like, your book is good. Let's go with that. So we got an illustrator and we published the book, and I went through the process because I'm getting ready to do that anyways. Pulled my book back from a couple very well-known places because Dave Goggins was like, don't let anybody publish your book. And he's right. They own a lot of your information when somebody else publishes your book. So I wanted to give it a plug, did it with the kids' book. next day we're on the best-selling list on Amazon. And my son at 15 is the editor of a best-selling book. I was like, dude, your resume is golden. Like, you could pick your job. Let's go. And he's like, I don't feel any different. And I still don't have any money. I'm like, fair enough.
You know, I really wish I would have started writing books earlier in my life and career. I actually tried to write one earlier, about 10 years earlier than I did. And it got rejected, of course, by all the book sellers. And back then, there really wasn't the whole Amazon thing. But you know, I wish I'd done it sooner. I could have wrote you so many books during my business career. There's at least 4 books in me of just employee stories alone, of like all the crazy. You know, I come home every day and tell my girlfriends, you know, you won't believe what this employee did today. It was a never-ending adventure of stories. Like, and so I wish I'd written more. In fact, when I wrote my book, a lot of my memory had faded, and it took a while for stuff to come back. And fortunately, a lot of stuff came back. But you know, it's one of those things. And so I think someday he's going to thank you for getting him started early. And in the book, and what's the title of the book? Let's give that a plug out so people can order up on Amazon.
That first book is called The Fox in the Box. I got a little Sheba that looks like a fox, and she stopped and looked at an Amazon box. That's where the title came from.
There you go.
And then I was like, what am I going to write about? So I took parts of my book and I whittled it down to where kids could talk to their parents, and their parents could bring home stories like you just talked about and talk to them at a kid's level. So I have questions at the end of the book that everyone raves about. And those questions, of course, have different answers based on the ages. So the book it's been getting great reviews, but I never wanted to be known as a kid author. But whittling down the messages helped me on stages. We did, Grant Cardone did a little competition he called the Great American Speak Off, and they did a TV show on that. And I auditioned, and I was one of the top 150 people in the nation on that. Nice. Telling a quick story about, believe it or not, my time at the White House. And what we talked about earlier, where the president has a whole lot of weight on his shoulder, I kind of tell the opposite side that no one sees. And that goes like this. While I was in an event site, I looked at the calendar and I saw a little thing called a meet and greet. I love those things. So I looked around and all I saw was this guy in a wheelchair. And he was just kind of slumped over. And when the president came in with his booming voice, he's like, "Hello, young man." And immediately this guy's shoulders rocked back and his chest popped out. And his face that was filled with wrinkles, it just burst in this smile that made him just look young. Wow. And what's amazing about that is you don't have to be the president of the United States to speak that into someone's life, to give somebody that feeling where a recognized leader, because somebody's looking at you as a leader, recognizes you in a moment. And that got me to the national stage, and then I messed with it and screwed it all up after that.
Well, you know, it is interesting what you mentioned, that leaders, leaders need to be conscious about the fact that they have. You know, that was the thing I talked about in my book. You know, the importance of realizing that people are looking at you. You know, I there's a lot of companies I see where a CEO will put out, you know, some PR thing and about the company and their mission statement or what their moral sort of thing is, and you'll look at the leader and he's doing the complete opposite, of what he is espousing, or the company's espousing in their company's values, and people see that. Like, people, it's almost like they don't realize that people are like, "You're full of shit." Like, we see right through you, and we see that you don't walk your talk and stuff like that. And the military is so good at generating leaders and leadership. We've had a few people that have done, I believe we have one of the West Point guys who does leadership and stuff, and I think from one of the top colleges. And the military is so good at that, and developing leaders, and teaching people leaders at every level. It's really important. So your book, Rule of Three: How Elite Leaders Win, is coming out in June 2023. You can pre-purchase it on the site if you go to your site there. Give us the .com for that again, so people can go there and pre-order.
Leaders-kit.com is where you can pre-order that.
Mm-hmm. And why did you title the book Rule of Three? What's the impact of that?
Yeah, so psychology, right? And all all about this. Psychology tells us why people don't do things. And what I've noticed is whenever you give more than 3 things to people, they dump it all usually, and they can't handle it. So the 3 things for leaders, as I started to go through I'm a student of awesomeness, and now I like to be a professor of awesomeness. What I do anytime I see something that's awesome is I write it down. Like, you can't grab traction without friction. I'm like, let me write that down. That's a fantastic. I love it when somebody says stuff like that. So I took this giant stack of notebooks when I was going to retire, and I had, no family in Afghanistan. So I started looking at all these things and highlighting what it was. And I found 3 things that elite leaders do. And when I'm talking elite leaders, my career looks like multiple 4 stars, multiple 3 stars, people who are commanding in combat, the president of the United States, special operators at every elite team that you can probably think of that have invited me out to be a part of their team to make it better. And so I got to see a lot of angles of leadership, and these 3 things stuck out to me. The first one is people. People are the priority. And so the people aspect gets overlooked all the time. The second thing is time and how you manage it. And the third thing is money. But this is how we do it. This is wrong, but this is how we do it. So whenever you're given a leadership task or a problem, you ask, how much is it going to cost? How much time is that going to take? And then you look at who's going to do it. When you flip the script, you get how elite leaders win every time. Who's going to do it? And then they tell you how much time and money it's going to take. And that's the winning formula. It's a W. Look at that. Throwing a W up on the screen because it's a win every time. And it's amazing that we don't do it like that, but that's the book summarized.
Yeah, a lot of stuff is, especially from a toolbox aspect, is fairly simple. Like I always had, a toolbox that I always go to, very, very simple techniques, especially if I had gotten off track. Coach, is it Knowlton? His one thing, go back to the basics and stuff. And so keeping it simple, and like you say, keeping it three things to focus. What are some other techniques or tease outs we can do on the book?
Yeah. So from the people aspect, there's a lot of different mantras on how people look at that. And the common thing that I've gotten back with feedback on that specific topic of hey, you can't always pick your people is, yeah, you can. So every time we've been given a team in the military, you said it pretty well. We get trained a lot in leadership. We do a lot of leadership training. Every year I'm doing something specific to leadership. And one of the things we do is a very old school mentality of you give somebody a job, you hire them to do it, and then you just expect them to do it. You don't monitor what they're good at. What I found on very elite teams is the elite leader will pay attention to everyone's qualities. They'll look at the positives and the negatives, and then they'll focus on the positives. So if you've ever heard of a SWOT analysis, that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is how CEOs, they do SWOT analysis to figure out what they're good at, what they're bad at, what opportunities they might have, and what their threats are. I get rid of threats and I make it a SWO analysis.
Oh, there you go.
And what happens is you get the strengths, the things that you're good at, and you tell people to do those. The people that are good at those things will do those things for you, and they'll do it really well. And your weaknesses, you just find somebody that's good at it, even if they weren't hired to do it, because it's amazing what you have on your team whenever you start looking at it that way.
There you go.
And then you'll find more opportunities. You just drive over the threats. They go away. They just go away. And then you're just full force. And that always comes out as a question is, how are you getting so much money? And with budgeting in the government, they give it to people who win. And billions of dollars have flown through my organizations because we win. And we do it all the time. It's amazing if you just flip the script on that. So
we're pretty good at it. We develop good leaders. It's I've been watching the dynamics between the Russian war in the Ukraine and how their leaders work. And I've seen a lot of commentary from the military leaders on why our leadership and our militaries work, whereas opposed to theirs doesn't. What's kind of interesting is like their military structure is a little different, where mean, they have like top military leaders almost on the front lines because of, I don't know. I guess they have everybody's a leader over there or something. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? I'm always kind of interested in that.
Wow, you're reading my mind because I just pulled that one out. Okay, so General Patton, he came up with this thing called ground truth. And in World War I, he was a tank commander. He did a lot of tank things, and he used to pull his tank up to the front lines. And then when he was in World War II, he was a 5-star general. And one of the things he did really well was whenever he got updates from the battlefield, he called a flag, and he's like, "That's not right. Let's go down to the battleground and get the truth, ground truth." So he would go and ask, "What do you need?" And then from the battlefield, they would tell him what it is that they need. I employed that same thing when I was in Afghanistan. If I had SEALs, for example, that needed something, I would go down and visit them as the senior guy from a directorate standpoint. And I wouldn't stay too long, but I'd be like, "Hey, what do you need? This is what I'm thinking." And then I would give them updates on other things we were doing. And then that drove the train faster because I asked the people who were actually doing the work what they needed. Yeah. It's amazing how many times we skip that step. But that's a military ground truth that I can plug it right into that question.
That is awesome.
Definitively, that is how it works. That's how it's supposed to work.
There was another thing that I researched recently, and it was the U.S. Army's be no do concept. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Army changes their constructs a lot. And there's a lot of leaders that have been in for a long time. Andrew Stedman, good friend of mine, worked at the White House with me. He has a website called The Military Leader, and he posts things like that out there where he'll review some of the things that have gone in the past and then put them into the current Army structures. And I love following that stuff. I just love it because it's amazing how you can pull excellence together whenever you know where we've come from and what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean the amount of work we put into building great leaders, and I think doesn't one of the successes for our military in the U.S. Is because leaders, we teach everyone kind of how to be a leader for the most part, and like units can basically do their own thing. I mean they clearly don't go against orders, but they can make decisions in an extreme environment where maybe somebody has to take over and step in a crisis situation.
Yeah, we did a lot of that when I was in command. The last time, all the organizations that I've been a part of, the Air Force have won major awards. All the commanders that I advise now are the top in the command right now.
Wow.
And so, like, whenever you're starting to look at leadership and what works, everyone has a different cycle. So putting a label on how that works is definitely dangerous. But what I have seen is whenever you can pull somebody's strengths out and put them on a team of other leaders, they'll start to move forward. And in my situation, I had a great command team. My last command, we won best in the Department of Defense. That's all the branches of service for one of our facilities. And we started rolling out some things that weren't in the books, black and white. We just made the rules and said, "Okay, is this good? Because if it is, we're going to keep doing it because it's working. And if it's not, give us some guidance. But we're not just going to sit around on our hands because this is a problem and it affects operations." We empowered commanders to do that. I empower commanders to do that right now. Whenever they see a problem, let's fix it. And then what is somebody going to do? Come slap your hand for fixing a problem? No, that never happens. You fixed that wrong.
That only happens when I work in like big corporations and stuff. People are like, "Why'd you fix that?" You didn't stay within the confines of your job. But when you're in the battlefield, I mean, you're in sometimes a very alive arena. I don't know if that's the right term, but you're in a combat arena. You're under the threat of death, war, assault, attack, and then sometimes you're defending your attack. There's a lot of leadership skills that go into that. And how does a lot of that translate to business? Do you find when you consult with businesses and companies?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question that I'm going to answer right now. Did I delay that good enough? Or
yeah, I'd like your setup on the stall for that one. Yeah,
good. So the last time we had the threat of an enemy force coming upon one of our installations, I went out and I talked to everyone that was on the installation about their specific part if that were to happen. Now, we got attacked a lot. It's just like anytime you're in war, you're expecting to be ready and happen to do whatever it is that is needed. But it's better if you communicate. So if you have a plan and you go through it and then you exercise that becomes training. And training cycles are now something that are a dirty word because, you have company training, you have corporate training, you have all this mandatory training, but it doesn't necessarily need to be dirty. It can be helpful when it's applied correctly to a specific situation. So when we were in Afghanistan, I went through and I hit everyone up on my team, all the leaders. I said, "What are you doing?" And then I was like, "Okay, show me." And then they did the cycle. And then if we were to be attacked, I felt really good about that. And when we were attacked, everybody did what they were supposed to because we did the training cycle. It's like practicing dialing 911 with your kid, right? Whenever something bad happens, they're going to call 911 because they already know how to do it. It translates to business like that. If you've got something that needs to get done, why aren't you talking about it? And why aren't you engaging your leaders in their portion of it? And what I find whenever I consult is that is the common problem. The leaders will do it if they knew what to do, but they don't. And there's no conversation there. It's just an expectation that usually falls flat.
What modes do you see where people fail as leaders? Where do you think when leader? Actually, I'm gonna throw a different. Well, let's launch that question because I already threw it out, but I think I got another one. But where do you see where in your mind where a lot of leaders fail?
Yeah, a lot of leaders fail in communication. So what happens is a leader is afraid to tell the truth. Just tell the truth. If it sucks, call it like it is. They want to beat around the bush, make it pretty, and not hurt anyone's feelings if they're not an elite organization. Elite organizations know each other really well. In fact, one of the best books I usually reference is it's a little bit older now, but it's a book called The All Blacks, and it studies the rugby team, the All Blacks. And they do this thing after every game where they really get raw with each other. And they say, "Hey, I love you. You sucked during this play. Still love you, but you need to do better." And then everyone lays it out on the table, and they're the most winningest team in history.
Oh, wow.
Because of they do a little pre-ritual dance like the haka, which is fantastic. If you're into YouTubes and you like that kind of stuff, they do a fantastic little haka dance. And that's also what they're known for, but they are the winningest team in sports, any sport everywhere. So that works. And it works in business too. It works on a battleground. It worked in the White House and it worked in special operations.
That's got to be really, that's a great collective self-accountability thing to the team where you help each other, recognize maybe things you haven't had strengths on or you're weak on or you fell down on. And, kind of helps you do well on it. One thing that's helped me is a lot of times, whether it's losing weight, writing my book or other things, is accountability teams.
Yes.
And so having somebody who can be like, "Hey, did you write today? Hey, did you eat right today? Do you eat right there, buddy?" I publish a lot of my stuff with losing weight and what I'm eating and how I'm doing things and the fasting I do on Facebook. Because and by doing that, it kind of creates a public accountability thing for me where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't go get that burger because I gotta tell people on Facebook, that I went and got a burger. So it helps keep me on the straight and narrow. It helps keep me like, I'm like, should I eat now? Why don't I wait a couple hours so I can brag on Facebook that I made it? It gives you that added pressure. And so I think that's really important. What do you think? Do you find a lot of leaders actively think about their leadership style, what their leadership mode is, their values? Many times in business, I ask people, what is your leadership style? What are your thoughts on how you do your leadership? And many just aren't aware. They're just like subconsciously, they've kind of learned kind of a pattern that they're utilizing. Do you find most people are aware, or they've thought through it, or maybe that's something that people need to do more and say, what is my leadership style? What are we trying to do here?
Yeah, there are two schools of thought on leadership. There's the great man theory, which is you're born a great leader and then you build on that.
Mm.
I think that those type of leaders are the ones that reflect on their leadership style, how things hit and how they didn't. And they write notes like me. And then I think there are people that try really hard to be leaders and they're just better suited for management, where they can take a task, they can hold people accountable, they can be truthful. That's not really pointing anybody in a direction, it's holding them accountable. So the leadership portion in your last example is you're leading yourself. When you look in the mirror, you're holding yourself accountable to some other people. There's a management aspect to this, but you're internalizing leadership by making a path forward. And I think people get that twisted a lot. So the great man theory, you're born with it. Those people definitely look and reflect and are always looking at what they can do to be better. And the people that aren't good at it, that are trying, that are learning how to be leaders, yeah, they're not as good and they don't do it as much. They might do it every once in a while when they're made to in company training.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be an introvert. I used to watch more than I talked and be but I was an analyst and I was also a strategist. I mean, I was playing strategy games very early on, just almost like an addiction. And I still do a lot of the online games that I play. I'm all about strategy. I mean, you can throw meat to an attack, or you can just act as a blunt object. But to me, I'd rather do things strategically, or try to do things strategically. And one of the biggest challenge that I get from those games is, being able to do strategy on the fly and plan, and even in the heat of the moment, or in a situation where, I don't know what the military term would be, but where you're in a fight or flight attack situation or defense situation, where you can, take a breath and actively use your brain to teach you other things. We had one of the astronauts on the show from the Apollo 13. Was it Apollo 13 failed flight? And, one of the things they do is they condition the astronauts to not react emotionally to anything, to think through the process. And they teach them so many different processes on what to do if this fails, what to do if that fails. And they practice them through thousands of potential failures, and basically to teach them to have this thing where they don't react emotionally. And I forget the term that it was the title of his book, but it's basically, Don't Panic Early, I think was the title of his book. And so it was an important aspect in them surviving the Apollo 13 failures. Don't panic early. And I've really stuck with that. And I've tried to develop myself to get to a point where I can utilize that, where I'm not panicking, where I'm going through the process. Okay, where are we at? Sometimes on my, online gaming Call of Duty teams, I'll say people, hey, let's all calm down. Let's take a breath. Let's not get lost. We're getting lost in the moment. Let's take a breath. Let's reanalyze, reposition, figure out where we're at. And it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it really does. We employ in the military a thing called box breathing, and that allows you to kind of take the situation in and then assess it. And it looks like this. You take in a deep breath for 3 seconds and you hold it for 3 seconds. And then you let the breath out for 3 seconds, and then you hold it for 3 seconds, and then your mind and body connect.
Really?
Yeah, I've modified it a little bit for whenever I get on stages. When you're looking at thousands of faces or you're looking at bright lights, one or the other, people get freaked out like a deer in the headlights sometimes. I modified it to be just a 3 breathing cycle. So I do 3 things. I breathe in and I hold it, and then I let it go. And then by that time, I'll feel my mind and body connect, and then I know what to say.
Yeah. And then it's a great way to center yourself, huh?
It absolutely is. And the best thing about public speaking too, and I always teach everyone this, is when you get on that stage, take in that power, because you're going to feel that presence in silence, and everyone's waiting for you to speak. And that's how you capture the room every time.
I usually just exclaim, I have all the power.
Do you rip your shirt off too? Because
I do. I
was
tear it
thinking
just
about
like the
doing
Hulk,
it.
just like the Hulk. But then the HR departments came to me and said I can't do the rip shirt, strip down thing anymore.
I think
So.
I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and I think I might not do it either.
Yeah, this might be bad. Yeah, especially those big Fortune 500 companies. You know, they have like certain rules, but you can still turn green and everything. So that works. Yeah. The Hulk smash, Hulk speak. Arr, arr. So this is really good. What other sort of aspects do you have in the book, or anything you want to tease out to get people to pick up and order the book?
Yeah. So for me, I talk to an elite mindset, and this is something I think is missing right now. So where I will tease this out is Simon Sinek. He did the most popular TED Talk ever called Start With Why, and he explained the golden circle. So Simon said, why? Next up is you. All right. Your mindset, what you do in the mirror, like Mel Robbins will tell you to do a high five in the mirror. That works, by the way. I teach that. People are like, hey, that must be something you just teach. No, I mean, I've done it and it works. I don't do it all the time. But when you start looking at your own mind and what you're letting in, then you get a Mel Robbins action tied to Jim Rohn theory, which is, you got to pull the weeds out of your garden. And if you're not doing that, you're going to start beating yourself up on what you didn't do instead of all the awesome things that you did do. And it goes right back to a lot of the theories that I talk about and summarize in my book, but it's an elite mindset. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're part of a team, you got to be the best at it that you can. You have to be elite. So for my community, as a warfare communications operator, if I don't do my job, books get written and movies come out and people die, and it's never a good day. So I used to tell my team that. I'm like, guys, that can't happen while I'm here. You do understand the importance of your job. Like, you're not the guy pulling the trigger, but you're making sure that guy goes home. Yeah. So you're an elite person on this team. You're a special operations communicator. You better live up to it today, or I'm sending you home.
Yeah. I mean, life or death. I mean, this isn't my Call of Duty love. I can always recover if I have a shitty game, but in the real world, even business can be life or death. It can destroy you. It can destroy your finances, your future. It can be very destructive. And keeping a clean head, keeping the weeds out of your brain is really important, because sometimes it's just, like I said, I used to adhere to Coach, is it Noland? No, Nollington. He was the guy who was big winnings coach in college. I always forget his name. Okay. But one of his aspects was going back to basics. And I would take a feature in our business or some sort of process in our business, and I would modify it, or I'd be like, hey, let's tweak this a little bit and let's add a few little sparklies, and we'll try and make it do some cooler things, and and then things would stop working. You'd screw it up. Sometimes my brain would be focused on having a good time and enjoying all the money instead of doing the hard work that got me there. And I'd have to go, hey, well, okay, partying's got to stop. We got to get back to basics and focus on the important stuff, and let's quit burning through the weeds, basically.
Yeah, I think that is a common theme in coaching. Vince Lombardi put mastering the fundamentals on the map. That's how he explains it, but I think he stole it. Maybe I shouldn't say that on your show.
There's creative swiping. Tom Peters calls it creative swiping. We creative swipe. It's not stealing. It's creative swiping. It's everybody knows we're out there. And to correct my title of the book from Fred Hayes' book, from the Apollo 13, it's never panic early, which is probably better than don't panic early. Like never, like just never do. Just never panic early. And it was an interesting discussion in how they're taught. And he even told me, he said the movie is, it's a little dramaed up when you see the Apollo 13 movie. He goes, we never panicked. He goes, the only time I felt a little bit of panic was when they were coming in into the atmosphere. There was some sort of issue, I think, when they were breaking the atmosphere. But other than that, he said, he said, I wasn't worried. I wasn't afraid we weren't going to make it home. We were all pretty calm and collected. And I was like, holy shit. I mean,
Right.
I was like, this guy, I mean, you see the movie and you're just like, I'd be freaking the freak out, the first time something.
I think you would think that, I don't know, there's different levels of stress.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I'm getting attacked for the first time in combat, that was a different level of stress for sure. First time I ever got shot at, that was different than being attacked because I was physically being attacked. The first time I had to put the president on the phone, different level of stress altogether. The first time I got up on stage in front of thousands, another different kind of stress. The mindsets that you go through all get quilled with more cycles. The fact that he was calm is because he practiced that. He put the cycles in to just respond instead of react, which a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do that. So yeah, if I was put in that situation, I'd be freaking out. But I know he's probably been through the cycles and he's like, this is your pilot speaking. I am operating a spacecraft right now, just so that, my smooth voice is going to come out.
It was Coach John Wooden that I was referencing earlier. I had to pull that reference, so I got that right. Because people in the audience are like, "You're an idiot. Why can't you remember that?" No. But for some reason, I always forget his name, John Wooden. But yeah, he had a lot of great principles of leadership. I think it was like the 12 steps or 12 peers. It was a tiered pyramid system. But going back to basics, sometimes you really get off brand, especially when you become successful, and then you're like, why is everything failing right now? Why is everything getting mucked up? And it's like, go back to basics. So there you go. Anything more you want to tease out on your book on leadership, et cetera, before we go out?
There's one of the things that really put me on the map. This last book, my son and I actually worked together and tried. And the premise of this last book, called The Fox and the Talks, very similar title, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So as a leader, as a parent, as a teacher, as a whatever teammate, whatever you have to say needs to come through a process somehow to come out correctly. And I didn't know the world needed that, but that one popped that red ribbon on our last book so quick because of the message that it carries. And I just wanted to put that out in your audience too. I know podcasts are exactly, you're hearing exactly how we say it. And the message isn't the first time. This is not the first time I'm delivering a message to a larger audience. It's different every time I say it, but it's how you say it that matters, not exactly how it's said. So I wanted to give that to you. What do you think about that? Let me turn the tables. What do you think about that?
I love that idea. There's sometimes I screw with my dogs where someone will come around and I'll start talking to them and swearing at them, but I say it in a loving tone.
Swearing at them?
You little blah, 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 blah. And they're with their toes are wagging. And my friends will be like, you're cussing out your dogs. And I go, but it's the tonality. It's how I say it to them that makes all the difference. So, I love that sort of example, and I call my dogs, they have like 5,000 names and, so I call them all sorts of names, but it's the tone. They hear that you love them, that you care about them through their voice. And I think, I heard someone say recently that, your people need to know that you care about them and empathize with them. How important is that in leadership and in having your people be aware of that?
Yeah. People don't care about what you know until they know about how much you care.
Really? And I love that.
Yeah. That's my 10% change to a very popular phrase that was put out by Carnegie Mellon. But the premise is there. It's people. So I have a product that I provide to CEOs that are taking that next step. When they grow to a certain point, usually it's between the 8 and 10 million range, they have to grow their team. And what that looks like is a new person comes in after the success, and then that whole dynamic changes. So what I tell them to do is this little thing I call an owner's manual, and every general officer does it. Every commander does it. And I did it. I stole a whole bunch of things from a whole lot of places and put it together to make my own product. And I call it an owner's manual. And what it is it's how I operate. but it's not just how I operate, it's who I am. Mm-hmm. So it describes all the things that would cause a rumor mill, like, hey, I'm not married. Hey, I have kids. Hey, I have a dog that I like to cuss at every once in a while because it's a Shih Tzu.
They're a lot like Siberian Huskies, from what I understand.
But it's hard lines. Whenever you put those out there, it goes back to the communication. Whenever you explain to someone how they need to be a part of the team, they'll fold into place and they'll become a very productive part of that team. But that product fast forwards all of the things that make things awkward for the new team member to come in and start performing. Mm-hmm. And then everyone sees that person as a team member instead of a competition or an obstacle or somebody to work around, because that product helps tease out some of those questions.
There you go. Well, this has been really insightful and stuff to have you on the show. We really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've been a fan for a couple weeks now. I'm kidding.
There you go. Well, we'll make you a bigger fan, and then and all that good stuff. So give us your .com one more time so we can find you on the interwebs.
It's leaders-kit.com.
There you go. And order up the book, folks, wherever fine books are sold. Actually, you'll be needing to order it on his website. Rule of 3: How Elite Leaders Win. Are you going to release this on Amazon when it comes close to the thing, or is this going to be still a private affair?
Yeah, it's going to go everywhere. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Wall Street Journal, let's be on the bestseller everywhere.
There you go. That's definitely important and all that good stuff. So you want to take advantage of that. Let's give a shout out to one of our, let's see, what is it? Latest review on the Chris Voss Show. This came out February 26, 2023, thanks to amzn.to from Canada. All the way from Canada. Wow. Our wonderful neighbors to the north. Take off. I'm a big Rush fan, so there's that. He wrote, passionate, powerful, and potent. Latest reviews. Wait, is this on my show? Get ready to explore topics from all perspectives, unabashed commentary with compelling and thought-provoking ideas, a breath of fresh air, and a much-needed time. I'm touched. Thank you very much, amzn.to, for the 5-star review on the Chris Voss Show. There you go. And we couldn't do it without brilliant authors and people on the show, like Atlas Aultman today. Thank you, Atlas, again for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
There you go. Thanks, Simonites, for tuning in. We couldn't do it without you either, because we need you guys. Otherwise, what else would we just be sitting here talking to ourselves? Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, the big LinkedIn group, the LinkedIn newsletter, all the stuff on LinkedIn. It's pretty crazy what's going on over there. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.